This is an Israelite gatehouse. Israelite meaning going back, let's say, over just 3,000 years. And some. All right. The area of Dan, of course, was the northernmost of the tribal, not really a tribal allotment. This is the place where Dan left their tribal allotment to take over someone else's territory. They had some misfortunes and woes down there along the coastal plain for the simple fact that they were always in conflict with the Philistines. They thought that they did not have the best cultivated land for purposes of cultivating and growing things. So they started taking some excursions to the north. They came up here. They found this land to be quite lush and fertile. And they sort of took over this area where we are right now. Originally, during the time of Abraham, this area was called Lashem? Lashem, Canaanite city. And if you recall, when Abraham is coming up into the Promised Land, he comes and he visits this place. Of course, later on, God talks about the boundaries or the borders of Israel from Dan to Beersheba. Okay? When I say Dan, they don't necessarily mean the tribal allotment of Dan, but it means from the Dan, meaning the Dan River. That's just over here that we just saw a moment ago. Let's assume that Abraham was here sometime around 3,800 years ago. What you're going to see in a little while in that direction is a Canaanite gatehouse. Now, obviously, the least amount of openings you had, the more protective the city was. So it probably had only one gatehouse going into the city. What's quite unique about that is the fact that this is already made of cut stone or fixed stone. Some of it is rough, some of it is cut, but the other one is made of mud brick. Mud brick, not stone, mud brick. Some of the gatehouse is still standing. That's a very good example if you keep in mind Jericho. Because we talk about the destruction of Jericho, how God knocked down the walls. They didn't go sideways, they didn't go inwards, correct? They fell straight down, okay? And everything disintegrated? No. Because the city was destroyed, and it was actually built by mud brick. So you can understand it would disintegrate into the ground. So that's a very good example of a Canaanite gatehouse. This is an excellent example of an Israelite gatehouse. Also, if you remember when we went to Megiddo, we went through the Canaanite gatehouse, and I said, take a look at the sides. You see those empty chambers or rooms, which were probably guard posts. Later on, Solomon used those same type of rooms for where the elders sat on the gates of the city. This is the spot right here where the elders were passing judgment on all those going in. There's a reference just over there on the wall, and it says, and the king arose and sat in the gate, and all the people came before the king. It's taken from 2 Samuel. Now, 2 Samuel is also during the period of which king?
David.
David.
Alred.
Okay. Was David a real person?
Yes.
How do you know? Because the Bible says so? No, really. How do you know if David was a real person? Are there any references to David anyplace else? In other words, had they found any stones with his name on it? So how do you know that David was a real person? Maybe it was just a legend. Some scholars believe it's a legend. This particular spot right behind you, there's an archaeological dig which is going on. About a year ago, perhaps maybe even 2 years ago, they found a plaque. A plaque. A stone figure with carvings on it. Part of it's been destroyed, but some of it says something quite unique. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact writing that was on it, but it mentions something. It says, curse upon the house of David. The first instances of evidence that we have to King David was found right here. Now, what could that have been? That could have been some sort of historical statement that was written by one of the Assyrian or Mesopotamian kings, perhaps maybe cursing David, because David was a well-known conqueror, okay? So that's a very good sign that we know that he was a real person. Any questions? The problem with the area of Dan is this, is when the Danites came up here and they thought that everything was going to be hunky-dory and everything was going to be great with this beautiful fertile land around them and these trees and the lushness and the water and everything, that's when their problems really began. Why? Because the further away that you went from the center of the land of Israel, the more that you got influenced by pagan deities. And this is also a place which was ruled by different kings. You had the kings of Sidon and Tyre and Mesopotamia and Assyria. Every attacking army now going into the land of Israel passed right by the gates of Dan. So now they were in a constant state of war with everybody. They got their just dues. Gates, what's called a United Kingdom, bringing the two nations together. There were two nations, 10 tribes to the north, 2 tribes to the south, Judah and Israel. He brings them together, makes a common capital. Jerusalem becomes the common capital. But then about 100 years later, the empire is divided once again. And then you have some of the Israelite kings that start to build a sacrificial mound up here to sort of take away the importance of Jerusalem, telling people that you don't have to travel all the way down here, because now this kingdom, we have our own sacrificial mound and all up here in the north as well.
Okay, people, what's his name?
Or Joe.
We ought to know that.
You sure? You better know his name.
Whose name?
There you go.
There you go.
Jeroboam.
Yeah.
Remember Rehoboam and Jeroboam?
When he set the high places.
And Jeroboam said,
That's it.
put one idol up here and one down in Bethel.
That literally means the house of the Lord.
Right at the border of Judah and.
All right, any questions? Yes. Where was the temple? Further up, in this direction. It's a bit of a hike. Oh yeah, it's here, yes. Next.
Max, when we were walking up, noticed the different construction from what we've seen. You know, we've
Yeah.
seen the squared off, the chiseled block. These are all like obviously different kinds of rocks, but they're all rounded. Are these find them like this, or they round them off for a reason?
What happened was this. They found here chiseled stone, like you see over here, and they found also uncut stone that you see over here. Remember something else that's very, very important. Because the stone structures were like this, it doesn't mean that that's exactly what it looked like. There's a very good possibility that everything was all plastered on the outside and on the inside. But of course, as the centuries pass on, civilization changes, and of course they find different ways how to cut stone. But the Canaanites were not really known to be stone cutters, or perhaps maybe building large cities. What you will see here is just mud brick.
Canaanite gate.
So you had to sort of run up a slope, if you would. If it was an attacking army, it would slow you down just a little bit. Inside, this gatehouse was supported by 3 arches that held it all together. And here you see a piece protruding out over here and part of it protruding out over here. These are guard towers. So therefore, you can shoot in front of you and also to the side, anybody trying to go through the gate. Now, although it's made of mud brick, that's just the building material. On the outside and the interior is also a plastering. Now, part of this has survived only for the simple fact that it was underground for about 2,500 years. But in any case, if this is the ancient city of Lashem, which it is, when Abraham came into the promised land from which direction? Northeast, Mesopotamia, okay? Ur. He came in through this area, and if he entered the city, this would have been the gatehouse that he would have gone through. Abraham, remember his name changed,
Yes.
correct? Okay, Abraham, what does that mean? Avraham in Hebrew. Av meaning father.
Of many
Ha'am,
nations.
of the people, of many people. The father of the people.